I'm Paul Yoder. I am just delighted to be speaking to you about my friend Lynn. I want to start with some thanks, and that's to thank you for letting me speak. Consider it a great honor. I'm going to skip my part about about Doug. About Matt. Doug, I hope you experienced today's conference as a celebration of Lynn. I had to give this talk at least 6 times before I stopped crying to give it. And I didn't want to cry because this is a celebration of Lynn. It's obvious that Lynn's influence is amplified by Doug's influence, but this is a conference about Lynn. So it's not to take away from your contributions at all, Doug. I want to start with a paper I read recently. This comes from Life Sciences, and the conclusion was sort of astounding to me. It was that 50 to 60% of a scientist's productivity is attributable to his or her institution, not individual ability. Think about that. And about 2/3 of this institutional effect is driven by the presence of star scientists. So Lynn was clearly one of these stars. We've already heard 2 people talk about citation indices. I'm going to do that too. I guess in part because it's so astounding to have 88,000 citations of one's work. I'm going to break that down a little bit, though, to help it sink in a little bit. So remind yourself that a citation index at least was designed to represent the number of times that others considered our work, our ideas, our data important. So yes, Lynn was cited many times, but it's important to note that special ed is a small field. It's much smaller than psychology. It's much smaller than general education. So to be cited 88,000 times, it must be true that people outside of special ed are also citing Lynn's work. And it's not the case that Lynn had just a few papers that were cited thousands of times. Over 150 articles were cited over 150 times. And she published nearly, 500, you said 1,000, cited at least 10 times. This is a lot of different bits of ideas and data that many people consider important. But I also presented to an AI program, list the 10 most impactful researchers in special education. And you can see that Lynn and Doug's work was right up there, along with Sharon's. And you can see that the area that this AI program placed their names in was instructional design. If you think about these other areas that the AI program identified, I consider instructional design the most direct way to influence children's lives. So I really agree that Lynn was not pursuing fame. She did want to have impact on children's lives. And wow, did she? So if the effect of star researchers on institutional productivity is causal, then there must be multiple ways this happens. And I'm going to talk about Lynn's impact on my professional development to suggest some of these causal mechanisms. I'm going to provide a few examples, but there are many. So to me, Lynn was more than a star scientist. She was also a star grant writer. She was a star teacher, a star mentor, and she got awards for all of these things. So Lynn's effect on me was not just on my research productivity, but also performing other roles as a department member. She affected my teaching, my grant writing, and my research. So when I first came to Vanderbilt as a non-tenure track faculty, I was on the doctoral committee with Lynn, and I had never gotten a large grant at all. This Goal 3 mechanism within the IES, I had never gotten an IES grant at all. Lynn was generous enough to loan me one of her Goal 3 applications, and I used it as a guide for tone, format, and style. It was awarded the first time in the first round of reviews. That's the first time and the only time that I ever got a grant the first time. So in my opinion, Lynn was one of the best grant writers in our field. When I was on the doctoral program, I summarized the evaluations that students gave for the courses in our program. And many students mentioned one or both of Lynn's pro-sim courses as the best in the program. At this time, I really didn't know Lynn well, but I read the comments because they were impressive to me, and I still remember some of them. These evaluations indicated how Lynn had changed the students' thinking in important ways. Now, because I wasn't teaching doctoral students, and I really wanted to have the influence that I could have on doctoral students, this led me to say, oh, I should teach doctoral students. That should be a goal. And I should learn from Lynn how to do so. That became a goal. Sometime after joining the tenure-track faculty, I was asked to teach one of the required courses, the Pro-Sim 2. This was one of the courses that Lynn taught. She gave me her syllabus and helped me come up with evaluation methods for teaching the course. That was a part that was difficult for me, evaluation methods. I want to talk just about one of Lynn's studies that I consider quite beautiful. So this is a study that found that children with dual math and reading disabilities who scored low in working memory benefited more from a math and reading treatment that had a working memory component than comparable treatments without that component. This used a moderated treatment approach for those of you who know this approach and know how important that approach was in my own research. I also used this moderated treatment approach as a theme within which I could embed many of the topics within Pro-Sim 2 to create unity within the course. After I'd been teaching Pro-Sim 2 for several years, Lynn tactfully suggested ways to improve my content and teaching methods. Now, think about that. I want to go back to something that Sharon said. I never felt that Lynn was critical of me. And I'll tell you a little bit about why I didn't feel that way. I always thought that what she was giving me was a gift. And I found that following her feedback improved my instruction. So I want to summarize just a little bit of what I've talked about as potential causal mechanisms for how a star like Lynn can affect the productivity of an ordinary faculty member. My experience of Lynn was as a generous and kind person. So just knowing her, I knew that her input was a gift. My respect for Lynn's work and teaching led me to seriously consider input. Of course, we're going to disagree with each other sometimes, but I'm going to consider seriously everything that Lynn asked me to think about. And applying her input improved my work and effectiveness as a faculty member. So Lynn's example has lessons for the rest of us. It matters with whom you work. Be open to others' input. Of course, you're going to disagree sometimes. We're trained to do so. But be open to others' input. And when able, act with generosity and kindness. I stayed at Vanderbilt for 33 years, my entire academic career, because it enabled me to grow. I recently read, if you feel like the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Lynn was a large part of what made our department one of the smartest rooms around. There was no need for me to move. I'm confident I'm not the only one who felt that way. I believe it's time for Yoder talk.
Hi, I'm Joe Wehby. I've decided that I've been here for the 4 decades that Doug and Lynn were here, so I'm maybe the oldest person, longest tenured person who've known Doug and Lynn since their time at Peabody. And I have the privilege of being able to talk to Lynn, about Lynn, from the perspective of a doctoral student, as a research fellow at the Department of Psychology, as a new faculty member, as chair of the department, and most recently as organizing a new dyslexia school and center here at Vanderbilt. So I really feel like that I've had the pleasure and the privilege of being able to experience all that Lynn offered in these different capacities. So I'm not going to go through all that process. I can tell you that, when Doug and Lynn came in the 1980s, there was a lot of buzz about them being there, and I didn't know what the buzz was about. But then I caught up in the wave, and then I was a student working in behavior and didn't have a lot of interactions. But when it came time for my dissertation, I solicited some feedback from Lynn. And my dissertation was about kids with behavior problems and classrooms and so forth. And she agreed to look at my proposal, and she said, "You need more money." And she immediately sent me and helped me craft a proposal to the graduate school that got me more money to allow me to do a much more rigorous job in my research, and it just made that impression that she did not have to do that, but she did. So, and thinking about her across all those different domains and those experiences that I've had, I wanted to think about why she made such a great colleague. And I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about the 4 areas that I think many have mentioned, and the areas that I think that I would consider to be ideal as a faculty colleague: someone who's gracious, someone who's efficient, somebody who's humble, and somebody who's funny. And for those of us who knew Lynn, Lynn could be incredibly funny, sometimes in a wicked sort of way, but she could be incredibly funny about things. So I struggled a little bit about how to talk about this, because I don't do research with Lynn. I've worked on projects and mostly training projects with her. But I did remember something, that I had this habit of archiving emails for a long period of time for people whose work I admire or who's provided great advice. And so I was able to go through those emails. So what I'm going to show you now are some direct quotes from Lynn on topics of emails that I sent or emails that she sent in response to other emails that other people sent. And I will tell you that in the thousands of emails that I've reviewed, most of her emails were about something gracious, saying something positive about something that I did, something else did, something the department did, and I was really blown away about not recognizing how positive she was and what a positive influence that she was in my life. Then I'm going to talk about the efficiency. Don talked a little bit about her ability to sort of turn things around quickly. In a very quick, rapid sampling of these emails, I would see emails that I sent, and I would say the average return email was about 30 minutes at most. Sometimes they were like 30 seconds. And so you think, so she's written all these articles and all these things, and she's doing all these grant work, and she's got time to respond to my emails. Humble. And I think we've talked about her humility, and it's hard to find an email about her humility, but I found one that she sent, and I'll show you. And the last one I thought to end on a more light note is some of the funny things that she sent, mostly making fun of Don Compton and myself, but it was also things that I know we are, so. But I want to spend time talking about graciousness, and it's not just about, and these are sampling, and again, this is, it's really from my work as a faculty member, from me as chair, and work in the department did, so just these are some sampling things. So this is, I put these in context, this is a doctoral training grant that Marcia put together, and I had to admit that every training grant that we've been highly successful in getting had Lynn Fuchs's fingerprints all over it. And I think that we would not have been as successful without her feedback. So this is just just simply thanking Marcia and myself for putting these things together in a period of time, but also me recognizing that much of that work was done by her. We had a department newsletter that went out that one of our former staff members put out, and no one else sent her an email saying how much he appreciated the work that put into that newsletter. And again, that sort of small kindness I think it's something that I hope that I can take away from this and continue to sort of build on that legacy of her. Talking about other faculty members who got into a state accreditation meeting, giving credit to others that did that. But the part that in feedback for a conversation I had for welcoming new students. So again, those sort of simple examples of just taking a moment. But also impressive that she took the moment to thank people that she didn't even know. So we had a former colleague, Randall Harley, who was a longtime faculty member, and she CC'd me on this email that she sent to Randall's son when Randall passed away, saying things about his impact on her life, what he did for her, what he did for the field. And I know that people often express remorse when people die, but I'm not sure how often people actually take the time to thank a family member for that person and that their commitment. And simple things like remembering people's birthdays. This was an email that she sent me to remind me to acknowledge Kim Paulson's birthday at a meeting we're coming up. And there are thousands of emails like this. But one that is most meaningful to me, this last quote is the last email that she sent me. Someone had sent a photo, and this was her health was failing, and someone had sent a photograph of one of our staff members, a new baby, and she simply sent this message, beautiful, so healthy, and peaceful. So even at that point in her life, she was still expressing her gratitude and things that were coming. So my next topic is efficiency. I don't really know how to describe this because I don't know how to define efficiency, but I think those of you who met with Lynn frequently, she did not like to waste time. Nor did she like to propose long meetings. So these are two emails that I received after proposing A, a 2-hour meeting, and B, weekly meetings. Do we need 2 hours? Instead of weekly meetings, I think we can do the work with monthly meetings. There are also several emails because I proposed a lot of these things, and her efficiency was amazing. The third category that I think made her such a special person to work with was her humility. And as many of us said, she did not do this for glory. She did it because I think that work would matter to her, and she knew that work mattered to the field. So she sent me one email in the entire time that the archive that I have, and that I think expresses, "Hi, Joe, at the risk of bragging, I'm passing this on to you. I feel so proud of this." This was an email that she received from a former student who had taken her pro-sim class and had gotten an IES score of 1.89 on her first submission, and she gave Lynn the credit for getting her to that place. And I see several of our former graduates here, and I'm also very proud to announce that we've had many of our graduates who receive early career awards because of taking pro-sim from Lynn. But I thought, this is it. And she was apologizing because she thought she was bragging on herself. So that humility, I think, is it's admirable, particularly in a space where not everyone is as humble as I think they should be, and it's just another example of how her life, her persona, I think, should be influencing all of us. The last thing I want to talk a little about, and then I'll add some final remarks, is this issue about her humor. And believe me, I mean, with the crowd that she hung around with, she probably had to be funny. I laughed about a lot of different things, but these are some examples of emails that she sent me, and again, I'll go through this. So she was responding something about a grant that we did not get funded, and she sent this email, "Thanks for letting us know. Our batting average is still respectable. I agree that we should figure out how to improve it on the next round. I hope you all appreciate my attempts at being one of the boys with my sports talk." And as Doug can say, her sports talk was not exactly one of her lesser known skills that we would talk about. There was an email about Shane about some concerns about some students' performance on qualifying exams, and there was some agreement that there would be some oral remediation in terms of like having them meet with some people about, to flesh out the questions. And I think her response to this one, "Be fine with me. Be sure to ask about measuring oral reading fluency by watching students' mouths as they read silently," was her way of saying, that she was not very happy with some of those things. This last series of 3 emails came about. We had a former colleague, Craig Kennedy, who was the chair of the department, went to the dean's office, and then went to Georgia, the dean of the College of Education in Georgia, and then went to a provost position at UConn. Don had sent an email about this. And in that email, he made some comment that maybe Joe should be going to the dean's office. Maybe it was predictive. And Lynn's response was, about Joe, I don't know if he has the right wardrobe for this trajectory. I don't think she'd appreciate my tone. But then she wrote back, I made some smart comment. She wrote, Don would make a great dean. But literally 30 seconds later, the next email said, I forgot about the flip-flops, though. There was a comment that for those who are at Vanderbilt spent an inordinate amount of money for a new logo. And our logo was an oak leaf and something. And Lynn had found, or somebody sent Lynn a Russian newspaper that had that similar V, upside V with an oak leaf. And her response was that we ditched it because the Russians stole it from us. I have this relationship with Joe McLaughlin about, we used to have a Peabody party at CEC, and Lynn sent me this email saying that Joan was talking about going to the Peabody party at AERA. So Lynn suggested that I go with her, and whether or not Joan actually said this or Lynn was trying to make a joke about that, was saying that it would be a punishment to go with, my punishment to go with her because I never gave her a ticket to the CEC party. And finally, this one I think Camilla can also relate to. There was an email about some renovations I forget which building on campus, and somebody had made a comment that they were hoping they would get rid of the mold in that building, and Lynn said they're boxing it up into small packages and selling them to help pay for the renovation. So again, these are just examples of her ability to, the combination of intelligence, kindness, graciousness, humility. I mean, I think if you asked anyone to put together their ideal faculty colleague, the photograph would show up as Lynn Fuchs. So in the last year, I think I just want to talk a little bit about, I think because I knew Lynn for so long, was privy to some more private conversations, and she was very helpful to me as a faculty member. She was, and Doug as well, interested in my children and my children's success, my success. But her dedication to the work was to the end. And I was tracking these emails over the last year of her life, and they were all about a new grant she was having, and her excitement about this new grant, and how she was so looking forward to doing it, and sort of celebrating with me her thrill about having this grant and looking forward to doing the work. And so it was a very, she didn't slow down, and she was always looking to make that contribution. And I was listening to Doug's remarks, and I just want to say, end on this note, that, and at the Saturday school, many of you know that we have a new dyslexia school at Vanderbilt and a research center, and Doug, Lynn, Marcia, Jeannie, others, Lori Cutting, were very influential in helping us think about how that school is going to start. We got an old house to start off with. We have a nice new building if you want to look at it now, but it's but Lynn's contributions in the group about how to make it a really true, impactful school. And when I think about why you started the Saturday school, and my biggest regret that she's not here to see the work that she suggested and the approaches that we suggested to make a difference in these kids' lives is really being done on a daily basis, that she was not able to see that. And I hope that she can see it from where she is now. Thank you.